So I'm here with 4 of our teachers of our youngest students, teachers who love little steps and first steps. And those first steps are really important. Could you all introduce yourselves, starting here with Louise?
Okay, I'm Louise Holland, and I am the transitional kindergarten teacher, and this is my 11th year.
I'm Lindsay Rogers. This is my 5th year in kindergarten at Trinity.
I'm Karen Fetterman, and I teach kindergarten, and this is also my 11th year.
And I'm Megan Wright, and I teach first grade, and this is my 17th year at Trinity.
So what I would love to hear you all talk about a little are skills and habits. Those are 2 things that we work really hard on in these early years. And you all do such a wonderful job with that, and the rest of Trinity owes you incalculable debt of gratitude, because the steps and the habits and the skills that you set in place, they continue to build on and use. And so could we talk a little bit, let's start with math. That's a really important skill that is obviously vital to success in school and beyond. So Lee, starting with our young 5s, talk about math, or the skills of math and what you do.
Okay, be glad to. So we've been using Singapore curriculum for 6 years now, which is hard to believe that it's been that long. And it's a wonderful program for all grades, because you start with having a very concrete experience. You're touching manipulatives. You put those manipulatives away and you switch out for another, because sometimes children don't understand that it's still the same number, but it's a different object. And it's so much fun when you see sort of the light bulb turn on for children when they start making those connections. And then as we advance, we go into more of a pictorial type of exercise. In TK,
So when you say pictorial, you mean like up on the board, you may draw a picture of what a number looks like and how it's divided up? And
yes, so we could do that, and then children might use an iPad to make a pattern. So just other ways of visualizing their math. In TK, we cover sorting, matching, all kinds of number sense. And I know kindergarten and first grade will hit that too. And patterning, I think, is one of my favorites, because in TK, we don't want them just to say, what is an A-B pattern? That's abstract. So in concrete manner, we will take manipulatives and start making colors or numbers. And then we start asking them, well, when do you know it's a pattern? And then the light bulb again goes off, and we'll circle where we know it's a pattern. And then I believe they progress to A-B and that kind of thing in kindergarten. So they understand why we're doing this, and then they can apply it to their everyday life.
so how would you all describe that next step to kindergarten?
Mrs. Holland has done a fantastic job when they get to us, really setting that foundation and really giving them some good habits of when they come in, knowing how we approach math. And so we too, like TK, we start with a very hands-on based approach. We are giving them manipulatives so that they can see it and move it and feel it. Then as kindergarten is progressing, then we will start moving on to some of those pictorial representations, like a bar graph or a number bond. And eventually by the end of the year, we're moving towards the more abstract so that they're ready to go to first grade. But in kindergarten, we are doing a lot with patterning. We'll continue. We do more complex patterns. We'll do patterns with our body. We'll do patterns that we see out in nature. We'll do patterns with colors and shapes. We also touch on some some numbers, mostly to 10 in kindergarten. We're really working on, do they understand what numbers mean? That's great if you know this is a 7, but we want them to really understand being able to compose and decompose numbers to 7. So we want them to know that 2 and 5 make 7, but 3 and 4 also make 7. And we will practice this in multiple ways.
I love that. It's almost like a rich and unhurried education can say, let's think about 7.
Yes.
Let's go deep on 7.
Right.
And what can you do with 7?
Because a lot of kids will come in and they're like, well, I know how to add to 10 and I know how to subtract to 10. And they have memorized that fact. But really taking those numbers and those addition sentences apart and exploring what that looks like really does take math to a deeper level. And so at the end of sort of understanding your number facts, you really do know what that looks like in your mind. You know what it looks like in a picture. You know what that looks like in a story. You know how to build things and take things apart. And then that is when you truly know your addition and subtraction facts, which every kindergartner covets. They want to know that. They want to know at the end of the year, am I going to know everything to 10? And so they do, but they understand it, and it's not just a memorization.
Yeah, it's an enduring understanding that they carry with them to first grade, right? Yeah, you hope, we hope.
And they do. I think when they come into first grade, again, I think if you could kind of summarize this experience, the TKK1, the word would be foundation. And so building upon this foundation that they've built in TK and kindergarten, not just in what a number is, but I tell them in how numbers work and that math makes sense. And that they are comfortable with numbers. They enjoy playing with numbers, that they see that math is everywhere. And we talk about that a lot. Even as we're learning to read and write, math is everywhere. And that they're understanding this idea of a whole can be made up of 2 parts. And those parts can be moved around and can be moved over from one side to the other, but it's still a whole. And so again, it's that enduring understanding, it's that deep kind of love of learning, and also being able to engage in what we call math talk, because that's really going to bring all the senses alive for a child. They're touching, they're seeing, they're hearing. And it's going to build connections for them. So we're taking that understanding of numbers to 10 in that they've built in TK and kindergarten, that understanding of patterns, and coming to understand that there are patterns in numbers. There are patterns in number facts, and that gives them traction, if you will. And in first grade, we start with numbers 1 through 10. We start with that idea of a part and a part makes a whole. 2 and 5 make 7. I can move 1 away from the 5, bring it over to the 2. Now I have a 3 and a 4. That's still 7. And if 3 and 4 make 7, 4 and 3 make 7. And if I have 7, 7 minus 3 is 4, 7 minus 4 is 3. It's understanding. But we go beyond that, and they're like sponges when they get to first grade. So we move on to numbers to 20, and then we'll move on to numbers to 50, and we'll move on to numbers to 100 by the end of the year. And they are doing some double-digit addition and subtraction, but it's all built upon this foundation of numbers to 10. And that's the beauty of the Singapore math program. And it makes sense to them. Math makes sense.
Well, one of the other things I hear across these 3 grades is that our classical approach is very developmentally conscious, like what is developmentally appropriate. So math is moving from the concrete to the abstract, from manipulatives to pictures to abstract, and there's always that trajectory, but you all are focused particularly on the one side, the concrete side, but you're moving them towards the abstract, and obviously when they get to upper school, they are functioning at a much more abstract level, and that's the way it should be.
And even if I could interrupt, even in first grade, we're following that same pedagogy, the concrete, the pictorial, the abstract, talking about the concrete as tools. We call them tools, and different friends might need different tools because everyone's mind is different. So
Yeah, that's great. So reading, writing, and arithmetic. I don't know if we can cover them all, but let's think a little bit about reading. That's such a vitally important thing that we do at a school, any school, but especially a classical school, teaching students to learn to read and then to read to learn. Both of those things go on, and you all are at that part of our education where learning to read has to be the focus. They obviously are learning a lot through being read too, but let's go the other direction. Megan, let's start with you with first grade. What are you all doing in the teaching of reading? And then I'd love to see kind of work backwards down to see how that foundation is laid in the grades before you.
yeah, I think in first grade reading is a big part of our first grade curriculum, learning to read. But our goal is to develop a reader, a lifelong reader. And that kind of goes along with the Trinity philosophy of the unhurried education. And I think all of us as parents of former first graders, I have been very grateful for that developmental approach to reading. So, there are six really components of reading instruction. And those are that phonemic awareness approach, which is really that sound-based idea of words being made up of parts or phonemes, and those phonemes coming together to make words. Phonics, so attaching symbols to those sounds. You have vocabulary, the words that we use every day. And then you have your fluency, so being able to read like you would be talking to someone. That often doesn't happen until second grade. And then you have your comprehension, which is the true reason for reading. And so in first grade, we are building upon this foundation, this really important foundation that our kindergarten and TK teachers have built in phonemic awareness that is so important to learning how to read and write. And we're moving more into the phonics, but always attaching meaning to our reading. And lots of hands-on. So our reading curriculum is differentiated because students are going to come into first grade at all different levels. But no matter where they are, I want to take them through that continuum, through that phonetic continuum at their level so that they can grow into fluent readers who love to read and who understand what they're reading.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What do you all do to prepare for that?
Well, that speaks volumes, I think, to being in kindergarten, because you do come into kindergarten. Children come in, some are reading and they are enjoying chapter books, and some don't know what the name of a letter or a letter sounds. So the challenge in kindergarten is how do you serve all of these kids and teach them the skills that they need to be able to be ready to read. And so I think one of the nice things in kindergarten is that we're very aware of that wide space between no letter sounds and not really, maybe even not even that interested in them, to a child who's eating up chapter books, even chapter books that they might read in first grade, and sort of making sure that we're meeting all of their needs. And that's a challenge in kindergarten. And I think one of the things that we have implemented recently within the past couple of years is the Reading Simplified program. And I think that's sort of been just a real gift to us as teachers, but definitely to the kids, because it gives a really good framework and it incorporates reading and writing and phonics and phonemic awareness all in one program. So it sort of streamlines the process. And one of the things that Lindsay and I have been really working on is making sure that each child has all of the skills that they need. So they aren't splintered. So they can read a little bit, but they don't really know the letter sounds because they've memorized, or they know the letter sounds, but they're not really able to blend as they read. And so our job that I think we've been able to do well in kindergarten is to help those kids take each step and not rush and stop on the step that they need more time on. Because at the end of the year, we're not expecting every child to read at the same level, because they're not developing at the same level. They don't do that in their faith. They don't do that outside in sports. We just don't develop at the same pace in every area of our life. And so we're able to sort of stop and say, okay, this child needs a lot more practice and a lot more repetition on letter sounds. And so we're going to just stop and do that. And then this child over here, she's really ready to put those sounds together and to make words and to create sentences and to create a story with those words. And so that's been a real gift for us, that we're able to sort of follow along with the kids at a pace that isn't stressful, because you don't want reading to be stressful for them. Our program is so literature based, just in our unit studies, and so they are hearing so many stories, and we want it to be a sweet spot for them where they're excited and they're not stressed. And that space between pushing and encouraging a little bit versus don't go too far and overwhelm them.
Yeah.
That's our job, to find that space and to live in that with them. Always encouraging and always trying to help come alongside them so that they feel really good about the hard work that they're doing. Because they're always surprised, I think, that they can do hard work. They'll sit down, this is so hard. We're like, you can do things that are hard. Like, we're going to do this together and you're going to love it. And they do. And then it sort of just feeds off each other.
Right.
Which is a real sweet thing to see in a 5 or 6 year old.
And like you said, we are really trying to give them good models of books and literature to read.
Right.
Really, when we're reading our unit studies, we are trying our very best to pick really wonderful
What are some
books.
of your favorites?
Some of my favorites. Well, some of my favorite unit studies are the rainforest. We do a big rainforest unit study, so the kapok tree is a wonderful one. We start out the year learning about God's creation, and so we will read through the creation story. And so it's really neat how we will choose books that they go along with our unit, but they will also support some of the things that we're doing. We love to do rhyming books, and they get so excited because we've been doing rhyming books in our language arts study, but then they hear it when we're reading it, and so they'll give us the thumbs up if they hear the rhyming words. So it's neat how that transfer of information is happening.
Yeah, that's great. So, and Louise, at TK, what are you doing to teach students to read and to be prepared to learn to read down the line?
Yes, and I love what kindergarten, first grade has shared. I think it's just such a nice continuum. So in TK, we work a lot on listening for a sound. We will work on if we can hear what was this familiar sound? Was it a horn or was it a train or just a different sound? And then we'll get them to, what did you hear first, what did you hear second? So they begin to sequence those sounds. We play a lot of games because it's so much more fun to learn when you are when you're looking for letters and you're scooping it up in some soup. and then you might find something that really doesn't belong in a bowl of soup. And we work on rhyming, we work on giving words that begin with a certain sound. We read some wonderful books, and the vocabulary is just fascinating to me. And you see the vocabulary extended when they're in free choice and they're pretending to build or do something. And we are studying bread this week, and for unit study, the whole process of sequencing. I had a grain of wheat and a slice of bread, and I said, how do we get from this to, and it was cute. It's magic. it just happens, and so it was really neat to go through that process for them to visualize it and talk about it, and then be so excited to tell other people their story. And we another thing too, and I know I'm talking for so long, but being attentive. I think that in today's world, it is very difficult to just sit and listen. And the class this year, we have been reading poems, we've been memorizing them, and you can just see the love and excitement that they really develop.
So one of the themes that I hear in your talking about reading is this wonderful tension between learning is fun and learning is work.
It's good
And
work.
it is good work that is, and there's a balance there, and we have to do. Reading is for most of us. I know there's some that just take to it, like fish in water, but reading for many is somewhat unnatural. It's like it's something that we have to learn how to crack that code, and so it is work. And yet we want to communicate from the very beginning that reading is incredibly fun.
Right.
Let's enjoy this book together.
Right.
The story, and so I love the way that you all are doing both of those. I want to talk just a little bit about handwriting. Megan, I think we were talking just a little bit before about why we teach handwriting, why it's important for students learning. Can you say just a little bit about that?
Handwriting is important, and I'm really grateful that we teach it at Trinity. The research has shown that a good handwriting program is going to help to strengthen those neuron pathways from the hand up to the brain. And when a child is able to write their letters the proper way without having to put a lot of thought into the actual formation of those letters, the research shows that their actual written work is better organized and uses richer prose. In other words, a good handwriting program is going to free them up to be able to put those thoughts that they have on paper. So,
And so we build that program as well. Louise, you start in TK with what kinds of activities that help them do that?
So we work our fine motor and our gross motor skills, and sometimes I think we forget about how important the gross motor portion is. So if you walk in TK and you hear children, you might see we're drawing a circle and we're counting 1, 2, 1, 2. The rhythm helps them just to get the flow of how we use our pencils or markers. And you are using this part of your arm and not just having it all on your hands. We do a ton of cutting, pasting, working with puzzles. Play-Doh. Play-Doh is such an important tool. And we like to dig. We will trace letters in sand. A lot of times scissors can be a child's worst enemy, and they look at it like, what do I do? And so we will really work hard so that in kindergarten they're very proficient. And again, it just leads to that freeing experience that I can do this. I'm a big kid now.
That's great.
Right. Well, and so if I can just piggyback.
Sure.
So we need to help the kids build the muscles so that when they are ready and it's appropriate to teach handwriting, that is not a stressful part.
Right.
They are ready to go. It's like you're not going to run a marathon before you train.
Right.
So we're sort of like the trainers of handwriting, right? And then we send them off and they hopefully go to Megan and run the marathon. But if they're struggling with the muscles and they're not trained and they're not ready and it's stressful, then they're not prepared.
Right.
And we want them to have success. And so I think
That's a great analogy.
We want to use a lot of tools before they even pick up a pencil. You know, we're using push pens. We are, like Louise said, using the Play-Doh, using beans to put down, stringing beads. We're using all of these materials before they have to formally write with a pencil. We'll start with a marker that's big and thick in their hands. That's easy to write, and because we want them to feel that success.
right.
Yep. And then when they get to first grade, we start formal and we do Danielian, right?
Right, yeah, we use
you wanna explain what
Danielian,
that
sure. We use Danielian handwriting at Trinity, and that is a program where all the letters are formed with a continuous stroke motion. And that type of program transitions really well into cursive in second grade. So again, it's that idea of following a continuum, the scope and sequence. And all of these things, all of this training that has been happening in TK and kindergarten has prepared them for first grade. Not only are their little muscles ready, but they've built habits that are so necessary to our handwriting instruction. They are attentive. They are able to listen to the instruction of how to follow, how to form these letters. Our handwriting program is in alignment with our reading program. So the children are learning to write as they're learning to read. They're learning to write the sounds that they hear. They're learning to form phonemes for those sounds. So the long O sound can be OA or OE or O or OW. And they're learning to see patterns within those words to help them become successful spellers and successful readers. And they, at the beginning of the year, they're always a little nervous. They look up at that Danielian. But I would say handwriting is one of their favorite times of the day because they're successful and they're so proud of what they're doing. We started our capital letters today, writing the date, writing the day of the week. And one little boy was like, wow. I said, that's right. Look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
And they have, and they were ready.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I had hoped that we would talk about skills and habits. I think we'll have to do habits in another session. But you all mentioned attentiveness and some habits along the way, but we'll come back to that conversation. I'm really thankful for what you do. You were talking about Play-Doh and playing with Play-Doh. I'll end with this. I get to tell a grandparent story. Okay. So my grandson Stone lives in California. And my wife Desiree makes Play-Doh and sends it out to him, which is totally crazy because it costs like $20 for Play-Doh. You could go down to Target and buy it for $4.99 or something. But the other day on FaceTime, he says, Guam, I need some new Play-Doh. I need green. Do you know what green is? There are lots of greens, which is like amazing. These little kids are amazing. There are lots of greens, you know. He's like, wait, and he goes, and you're just looking at the FaceTime. There's nothing there for 5 minutes, and he comes back with a T-shirt. He'd gone to his drawer and he brought a T-shirt. He said, "This green."
The shade of green.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
And so that's the kind of fun you all get to live
Absolutely.
with and
So true.
develop every day. Thanks for all you do. So,
Thank you.
all right,
Thank you.
non-nobbies.